Let's go.
All right. So welcome, everybody, to the Alfalfa podcast presented by ZBiotics. We are four entrepreneur investor friends seeking the edge, or the alfalfa, and money in meaning. We are Armand Asadi, Eric Johansson, Steven Cesaro. I'm Nick Urbani. We have no Armand today. Like we mentioned, Armand is in Techstars Mania still, so we support him in that, and maybe he'll be back next week. I won't be here next week, by the way. I think I told you guys.
You got a big trip coming up.
Yeah, we're going to Nepal, Bhutan, and Thailand. So
It's going to be epic.
Oh, the happiest place on earth.
It's also.
I can't wait for the download of that episode.
I think it's going to be good. I think there'll be some unique stuff in there because it's also one of the most isolated places on the earth. Like, they don't necessarily incorporate, other local, nearby countries' economies in there, but they do charge $200 a day to be a visitor.
Just to be there?
Just to be there.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Damn.
It comes with a guide. He'll drive you around, or
Wow.
But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so anyway.
My happiness is
fact and a
decreasing.
But I like it. It's like a little sustainable little area. And they're like, if you want to come disrupt our sustainable area, it's going to cost you. What's up to the chat? Jordan, is that thing live? Is
Yeah.
it the chat live?
If you're in the chat and
Let
you
us-
have not yet liked the stream, please
Also,
like the
let
stream.
us know if we sound good and everything's all good.
I haven't
You
haven't
guys
seen
got
anybody complaining. so-
Mysteriously quiet.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's up, Dan? Left Side Capital, Tunsky, Miles. I saw Tyler in there. Adam, what's up? Thanks, guys, for joining us. Absolutely. Support the pod. You can donate and get your comment on the screen. Go to streamlabs.com/alfalfapod, and any donations over $9, screen pops over Steven's head. So feel free to poke fun, make fun, ask us a question, whatever it may be. And you can get all the links at alfalfapod.com. All right, we have a smattering of drinks today. We didn't really go with like a single bottle.
Yeah, we're all over the board here.
We've been keyed off the hard alcohol for a bit.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna have to bring this back. I feel like people are slacking here.
yeah,
Yeah.
tighten it up again.
Ever since I came with the ice and the old fashions, I thought that would light a fire under everybody's ass, and then no, I just have.
We've been
Modelo.
one gone for so many episodes in a row. It's hard to keep the
it feels like I've been
rotation.
gone forever, honestly.
Yeah, we were back
It's
to
been like 3
Modelo's and
weeks.
Ranch Water, so kind of pathetic.
This is what happens when I'm gone. I see.
You're falling apart, dude.
Okay, yeah, you're right. All right.
Unbelievable. I knew I was the glue.
All right, so let's give a shout out to our sponsor, ZBiotics. So, still one of the best alphas. I got to admit, though, I ran out in the office, so I have not taken a
You're going raw
ZBiotics.
today.
No, I'm flying blind right now.
This is
I don't
bad.
like it.
So this happened like 2 months ago. Armand and I went without a ZBiotics, and then we learned our lesson again, why we don't drink without it. So I'm going to a little steak dinner tonight with my buddy Sean, and I think I'm going to relearn that lesson tomorrow morning.
All right, I look forward to that trip report.
But what better ad read to listen to than the founder, Zach Abbott's interview that we published last week on Wednesday at 5 p.m. So if you haven't listened to that, check it out. We forced him to do the ad read, and it was hilarious. He
did pretty good.
He did all right.
He
He
did
did all
better
right.
than we've ever done it. That's for sure.
Yeah, but you could tell Zach was, obviously off the charts, IQ smart. He came with a lot of knowledge on.
That was a great episode, by the way.
I thought it was one of our
obviously
best.
Listened to it as a passive listener. I know it's sad that it got fewer views on YouTube than our normal episodes. Maybe because we're not talking about number go up.
Yeah, I think that might have been it.
But it was great. It had so much stuff in it that I didn't know. I
it
felt
was
personally
chock full.
attacked by the charcoal comments. I was like, well, I'm an idiot.
yeah,
Personally attacked.
because you were the one that put me on the charcoal.
I swear it works, though.
Placebo's a real
Hey,
thing.
like placebo or not, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, what do we myth bust in that one? There was
He said
charcoal
you need he said you need 2 kilograms of charcoal
in your tummy.
So
Milk thistle, myth busted. Just drinking a bunch of water.
drinking water
myth busted.
doesn't. Yeah.
And then electrolytes, obviously, myth busted. So
He was lukewarm on one particular item called Oriental Raisin Tree or something.
yeah, you're right.
Which I went and ordered immediately too.
Yeah.
I heard that, and it just went right through my head. I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah, so if you guys want to check out like step by step what happens in your body when you drink, what the toxins in your gut do, and obviously how ZBiotics like gets rid of that toxin in your gut and how that affects, the rest of your body, especially the next day. Definitely check out that episode and then go to zbiotics.com/alfalfa for 15% off your first purchase. Okay. So we obviously didn't talk about number go up in that episode. I think we're going to talk a little bit number go down in this episode. So plummet the views, send them to zero. Okay, so today we're going to do a little markets. We got a little Cold War talk coming up. And then there's been a book in the Alfalfa book club in the Discord that has caught everyone's attention. And we want to give it a nice little, overview, but also that might become a recurring thing because, Steven, you were telling me yesterday that the thesis for this book is kind of why this podcast might exist and what is a through line.
Yeah, the whole book could be like our manifesto. It just fits in so nicely with like what we do.
Seriously,
why
that's
we
true.
do it. And you certainly can't cover the whole thing in one segment. So yeah, it'd be cool to just talk about it from time to time because it is like what we believe in, I think.
Agreed. Okay, so I'm going to kick off the little market segment. I made a few moves. I sold those SPY calls that I made. The bet was we were kind of like coming down that 200-day moving average. And
wait, hold up. When you say you sold calls, you meant you were long calls and then you exited?
I
closed them out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I thought when you said like I sold calls, it's like, oh, well, I basically
sell to open
went
versus
bearish,
sell to close.
Yeah. I sold to close.
Yeah.
Good thing I pressed sold to close, by the way, on that TD Ameritrade
Yeah.
button because I could have gone hourly.
Wait, so when did you buy?
I think it was
You
2
bought
weeks ago.
it. So you just made a little swing from that move on
Yeah,
the
because
bottom?
I was like, man, I don't think we're going lower right away. Like nothing in the economy was like gonna like send us lower. But I saw this 200-day moving average, and I was like, we might see a nice little bump off it. And I didn't want to shift the portfolio, completely. So I was like, well, I'll just buy this call for a hedge, and did a nice little 40% return over 2 weeks. Did its job. Probably gonna go higher, but like I don't know about you guys, but whenever I have a win in options, which is not too frequent, I just happy to close it green. So
huge key in options trades is that when price gets to these like support or resistance areas, like the really high time frame ones, it's good to just like generally with options, it's good to just like close the trade, I find, because like you have the time value to worry about. And it depends on if it's like a super long dated
it's a
one.
January.
Yeah, but if like the time is
expiry.
like, January, like if it bounces around there for a couple of weeks, like, that time decay kind of kills you.
Yeah, so might as well just take the dub and
It's a good dub
and
my
move
friend.
on. Yeah. A few other things. I started moving. Moved 10% of my Bitcoin stack to ETH. So I was looking for this like ETH to Bitcoin ratio level, starting at 0.055. It hit that. I think it's going to continue going lower, and if it does, then I'll continue to increase. Maybe next round do 25% of the stack.
Buying the dip on ETH.
On ETH, right? And if you hadn't listened to that last episodes, basically the reason is this next cycle, I'd rather hold ETH than Bitcoin. I don't know if the market will kind of come around to the security issue that Bitcoin has long term, but it might be 2 more cycles from now, or just call it 5+ years from now when the market does. I just don't want to be around for that narrative, and ETH's higher beta likely, so might as well hold that.
Dunsky's tip came in. He said, "Thank you guys for all the layers of your thought processes. Invaluable to a fellow like me with zero TradFi knowledge.
Ah,
All the breakdowns of your episode. Jeez."
Tunsky coming in, Papa. He owns that leaderboard, man. He fucking
We need to rename it the Tunsky leaderboard.
yeah, the Tunsky leaderboard. Oh, thank you, sir. Since we got to see each other so recently, I see your big smile in my mind every time. So thanks, bruv. Appreciate that.
Love you.
Yeah, I got some thoughts on. I mean, we should have a little discussion on ETH BTC.
Cool. Let's do it.
Not necessarily now, because I want to
Do you want me to pull up one of your old tweets, or is that too?
keep.
Okay.
Hold on. That
was
sounded
gonna-
like a.
It was a poke.
It was like
a poke.
a layup almost to. Maybe
Okay, the other
turn
thing I
into a
did,
dunk.
I only did one other thing, is I sold my GBTC in my SEP IRA. I don't know, the discount closed. I don't know if there's too much higher we can go in the short term.
It narrowed.
15%. So anyway, I just close it out, turn to cash in the IRA, and I don't know, we'll just see kind of what happens. Let it sit in the money market account. But anyway, those are the things I did. If you want to stay on crypto, we can. And
no, we'll bounce back. We'll bounce back. Good moves. I like the moves. I like the. I like starting to go from ETH to Bitcoin here. We talked about it a little more
yesterday. There's this is like a level where there's a lot of demand.
Yeah, we're at a. I mean, I guess we could pull up the chart if we have it. Just throw it up there. Yeah, this like kind of 0.05 level. Oh my god, yeah. Good luck reading that without having a seizure. Sorry, I didn't get you a clean chart. It's got like.
Is that the ETH BTC chart?
Yes.
I mean, I recognize it, but your charts look like they're having a seizure compared to mine.
They're so there's two zones here on the chart you want to look at. The first is that shaded. Is that green? Okay, the green. Yeah, very colorblind.
Colorblind.
That's why I have the blue and white candles.
That's not white.
Narrator. They're not
it's
white.
not white?
No, those are not white lines.
The candles aren't white?
You have dark blue and light blue.
Wait, what?
I didn't realize the depth of your despair when it comes to colorblindness.
Wow.
Okay, well, that would probably be a lot easier to see if I had white. So I will update that. But yeah, main thing here is that green shaded rectangle. That is basically sort of like the line in the sand zone. Like we had this huge move up last summer coming into the merge. Right. If you recall last summer, we had a similar thing happen where the ratio nuked and everybody was like, it's over. ETH is dead. All the Bitcoin maxis had like a death of ETH party on Twitter Spaces, and it marked like the bottom to like the hour basically. And then we just turbo reverse. So we've been kind of just slowly dying in the ETH ratio since then, kind of filling this. We had this like inefficient move up. So there's all of this kind of area that was never bid. We're tracing all through it. If you've been shorting since the top, like you've never had a stop run. Like it's just like lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. But this is sort of like the last line in the sand here. So if we don't bounce here, like we're going to 035, I think. Because if you look lower on the chart, like you can kind of see that down move before like the huge move up in the bull market around like 0.035. That is like an untested area of demand that I think will hold if we go to that. And there's a good chance that we could go to that. But I think this zone here is probably going to hold. And if not, I think we get a really good bounce for it. If this was a 1 minute chart and I was trading it, what I would think is going to happen here, or my bias would be that we would get a big bounce off that level. But then I'd be looking to see if we put in like a lower high towards the top of that range there, right? Yeah. Because if you sort of look what happened here, that move down last summer, that gave us a market structure break to the downside. Like that broke high time frame structure.
Is that where your yellow like kind of U is?
You see that like bottom? Yeah, that little. Yeah, that's potentially like a new lower low on like the higher time frame, right? And then you see that leg up we made a lower high.
Yep,
right?
That was the merge.
Yeah. So if you kind of objectively zoom out on this, it's bearish, right? Like higher time frame. It actually does look like it wants to go to 035, and I've kind of refined my thinking on this as I've learned more about like trading like the lower time frames and everything. I keep diving more into market structure. But I would expect like a pretty big bounce here, actually. And if we just go straight through without bouncing, I mean, that's
so if it does,
so
I shouldn't chase it. Just kind of stay true to the levels that I outlined before. And if it does,
it could be a good trade. Like if you get a reaction off this level, I mean, you could trade it and get like that could be like a 40% move, which is like a pretty big move.
So can we talk about this? So we're talking about ETH BTC, and when like Bitcoin has a spot ETF that's like looming approval, right? That would be like bullish Bitcoin. That would send this ratio lower.
Okay, so my generalized thought on this, there's a couple of things here. One, we kind of saw what might happen with the ETF last week because we had like the fake news thing and it pumped and Bitcoin pumped like twice as much as ETH did, right? But my generalized thoughts on this is that I really think the ETF is going to be like a sell the news event for BTC ETH. And I think that when you look at BTC price versus like ETH price over the last like month or two, like yes, there's been like no transactions on ETH base layer. The gas is like $5.
I saw single digits.
Yeah, right. So yes, all that is happening, and I think there's actually like an interesting discussion to be had there. But I also just think the reason Bitcoin has been relatively more strong is that like the market just knows there's like a 90% chance of an ETF, and it is front running that event. So while I do still think there'll be like a big pump on the ETF, right?
And what happened last week? Like a 10% pump?
Yeah, we pumped about 10%. I think we like literally ticked 30,000 to the penny on Coinbase. I think a similar thing will happen, but I think there's a good chance that at that point, like all of the Bitcoin ETH upside has sort of been priced in, and that could actually be the bottom of ETH BTC, because we're gonna make the logical conclusion next that, well, we have an ETH futures ETF and the Bitcoin spot ETF was basically approved because like it's kind of hard to justify having a futures ETF and not a spot ETF, and ETH has a futures ETF, so ETH spot ETF next, and then
so
the market kind of goes.
They both kind of pump,
that.
But then your view is that they both kind of retrace back down lower.
I'm not sure what's going to happen in dollar terms, honestly. Like I could make a case for either happening
because there's going to be like structural demand coming in from buyers of the ETF.
Yeah, there should be.
There should be, and maybe that takes a little while to like actually flow through.
Yeah, my main concern on Bitcoin is like, can we get over like 40,000? Can we get over that last kind of like lower high that we put in like early 2022 or whatever? That to me is like the really interesting level, because I do see a scenario where Bitcoin goes to like 40K and then goes back down to like 20,000. Like I think that path is actually very plausible given what's happening in the world. But like I'm not trying to get too far ahead and visualize all that right now. I'm just trying to think like what is going to happen over the next couple of months, and I think that's like kind of my sweet spot as an investor. So
yeah, I mean, I figure like if it does go to that 0.035, like it's going to be in the face of like the most bullish Bitcoin news possible, and I'm going to have to like make that trade still in light of that.
Like 0.35 is like, that's a really good level.
I know I already did the calculations on how much ETH I get for turning all my Bitcoin there, and I'm quite excited for that.
It's gonna be brutal.
And then you just stake that ETH. Is that your plan? Or
yeah, I think so.
Lido boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What'd you do this? Did you make any moves?
Nothing really noteworthy. Just
okay, cool.
How have the selling options? Like, is it premiums low? Like volatility's kind of peaked up a little bit.
Premiums came back a little bit. So last time we talked, I told you that my scanner, which normally has like 500 results on it on a weekly basis, had like 4 results. We're back up to like 200 some results. So this is still like low for me, and it's not a great time to make money selling options. But I'm just picking up my scraps where I can. I still like the sphere puts that I'm selling.
Okay.
So I have some expiring this Friday at the 35 strike, which I'm okay buying at 35. If it goes there, it's probably at like 37 now ish. But for November, there's pretty good premium selling the 30 strike, which
you'd be even happier buying it there.
Yeah, and I like the premium too. So that's a good one. Sphere is something I still want to be long on.
I heard the U2 show was great.
Yeah, we had 2 people in Nick's office today. One went to the Planet Earth one, and one went to the U2 one, and
Planet Earth.
They both came back with like pretty glowing reviews.
Wow. Yeah, there's a PPA pickleball tournament in Vegas, like the weekend it opened. So everybody at the tournament went to the Sphere too, and everybody was kind of talking about it. There was like almost more chatter about like the Sphere than.
I wonder if the stock pumps during this Formula One race coming up in Vegas in November, because the racetrack goes around the Sphere. Like you cannot avoid it. You can't avoid it if you're trying to televise the race. So
Cool.
It'll be interesting to see if anything happens there.
Interesting. I like it. Well, I actually made a few trade. My interactive brokers account is really funny right now because it's got like all my, it's got like all my positions in it because I don't organize it properly. So just like everything is in there. So I've got like my long term like investment portfolio, and it's just red, just blood red, just red everywhere. And then I have this other section that's just green.
And what's that? That's the short term trading.
So I made a bunch of moves last week. I shorted the NASDAQ, I shorted the euro, and I effectively shorted Coinbase through options.
As a hedge against your common stock.
Yeah, I still have a lot of stock, but I'm mostly delta neutral now, probably like a little bit long still. I think Coinbase is one that I like is a little tricky to me, but can we pull up the dollar chart?
DXY?
Yeah.
Man,
the
you pretty
DXY.
much nailed this one, by the way.
Yeah, so I know weeks ago I was like, we are taking, or maybe it was months ago now. I'm like, we were taking out those equal highs there after we ran those lows, and yeah, we turbo took out those highs.
Can you give a price number just for people listening?
I can't remember the price number, and my eyes aren't that good. What is it, like $1.05, $1.04 probably?
Yeah.
I think we're trading around $1.06 now, and if you look at the weekly dollar chart, it's just like green candle, or light blue candle, light blue candle, light blue candle. Like it's pretty much up only. I've got like $1.11 as a technical target, which is like way up there. But I think that would be like a lower high if we do get there. Like I know on the show I've kind of zoomed way out on the dollar and looked at the dollar on like multi-year charts, and it is this sort of oscillating sequence of like lower highs, but like these nasty spikes and then like sell-offs. And those spikes tend to be times when our stuff like Bitcoin does badly, and then the sell-off, Bitcoin does good. And Bitcoin really has been just sort of like an inverted dollar chart for most of its history, which is why I look at this first. And like this is one of the easiest charts. Like I think the Bitcoin chart's kind of hard, but this chart is like a 3-year-old could chart this. Like it's just going up. There's no signs of it not going up. So the dollar index is mostly made up of the euro. So it's not like any really good ways to kind of like there's a dollar ETF, but I want like leveraged exposure to the dollar.
What was that dollar ETF?
UUP.
UUP, yeah. That's right. So yeah, I was going to ask you why you shorted the euro instead of just go long.
Because
UUP.
I can't get leverage with like there's not like an ultra short or ultra long dollar, and like I'm trying to do this via ETFs. So I found I did like an Eric move, and I basically bought calls on an ultra short euro ETF,
like a 3x short euro ETF.
So I bought calls on a 3x, and they're printing right now, which has been nice.
Love to hear it.
Yeah. Can we pull up the NASDAQ chart? Because I think a lot of my hesitation with Coinbase definitely comes from the chart of stocks. Like if you zoom out on the NASDAQ, we basically failed to take out the prior all-time high, and then we broke weekly structure. So that kind of nasty sell-off we had beginning of the summer that took out like a pretty critical weekly low. And now, as far as I'm concerned, we're in like bearish order flow. So you're kind of selling the rips when you get them. There's a few levels I've pointed out on the chart. I wish I could remember and read them. I need this chart closer to my eyes. But can we zoom that? What is that? 14.1, 55?
Yep.
Yeah. So 14.155 zone is kind of my first target. I almost top ticked the short last week. Hopefully that is the top. But I'm expecting us to take out those lows, and we've got kind of these like equal lows here. If you look on the left side of the chart, that to me is like liquidity. We got an imbalance there on the daily. That's just like a a magnet for price to me. So that's kind of what I'm first focused on. I have like a
How
lot
much
of
of a dip is that
confidence.
to 14.1?
What is that? Like 4%?
Yeah, another 4 or 5% ish.
I know that all the way down there, we're looking at like a 12% or so. I think. No, the second to last target would be like a 12% dunk. So I think there's a good chance we go sub 14 for sure. There was like a little consolidation zone before we broke that monthly structure on the left there. That I think is like a pretty good target for me, but we could reverse at any of these levels. And like my generalized strategy is to just see what happens around the level and kind of take it from there and just kind of go level to level. But this looks bearish, and it looks like it's at least got like another -5 or so in it. And for that reason, like when we look at, can you pull up Coinbase? Like I think Coinbase is going to be, tied to the NASDAQ as much as we want it to be, kind of doing its own thing. Nope. do we have the Coinbase chart?
Well, I can ask you a few questions about the NASDAQ chart while Jordan sorts it out. You might have to switch the camera off. There you go. So, the NASDAQ is highly reliant on these 7-ish stocks, right? And I was telling you guys yesterday, I saw on CNBC, they broke up the Magnificent 7 to, what was it, the Spicy 3 and the Garpy 4. Sounds ridiculous. So the Spicy 3 are the volatile ones, like Amazon, Tesla, and NVIDIA. Those are the ones that have a much higher valuation. And then the GARP 4 is growth at a reasonable price. So they're still growing, but their PE multiple is lower. And that's Google, Meta, Apple, and Microsoft. So those 4, I mean, when you look at this chart and you're like, it's bearish, do you take into account that like these 7 are reporting earnings in the next like 1 to 2 weeks? So, or are you taking that into account, or you're just looking at the chart?
Not really. I'm just looking at the chart.
Okay,
But I take it into account. I think like when Steven says we could easily go down 4%, I'm with Nick. I'm like, of course we can, and I think that it almost makes it sort of like a certainty.
I said we could easily go down 11.
Yeah, it'd be even 11%.
I think 4 is like a given almost.
Like when you have these 7 stonks that are driving the entire ship, and they're also there's like near-term catalysts coming in next week. I agree. Like
Tesla earnings were today.
Tesla
right?
earnings were
I'm
today.
assuming they weren't good because I checked after hours and it.
Yeah, the stock was up after hours, but I
was
can't.
it? I saw it down like 15.
I think
points.
During trading hours it was up, and then in early after hours it was. Oh, sorry, it was down in normal trading hours. And it was up in.
No,
after
so we're
hours.
down 5% in normal trading hours and down another 4% in after hours.
That's what I thought.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, we should talk about Tesla at some point actually, because Rizzy asked me to chart it, and I hadn't looked at it in a while, and I pulled it up, and I'm like, oh my god, this looks horrendous.
Yeah,
like it looks like it's going to $40.
And I think Rizzy's a kind of like a known Tesla hater too. So
yeah,
he's probably on board with
he's
that.
entering like he's entering into his.
Wait,
his
what'd you
era
say?
now.
$40?
Yeah,
it's at $240.
I know. Like I'm just like I'm just telling you.
It's not going to 40.
Yeah, it's not going to 40.
What do you mean? It was just there in like 2020. You guys think it's like?
God, I wish we had a Tesla chart right now.
Yeah, like I don't think it's insane for some companies to completely reverse all of the nonsense of the nonsense years. Like
I think
crazy.
the key with Tesla in particular is that it doesn't go back to reality. It just is all nonsense always. That's the point.
So
like great hedge fund managers like David Einhorn have like basically lost their careers betting against Tesla based on like this idea that like, no, it's going to come back to reality, and it just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, you could pull up like a monthly chart if you have it. I feel like the monthly chart looks. You can really clearly see what's happening. Like it is gross. So I agree that it sounds ridiculous to say Tesla's going to $40. That's like a negative. What is that, like negative 80% from here? But like, if I didn't show you the name of this chart and I told you it was like a 1 minute chart of some like crappy tech company, you would be like, oh yeah, that is.
Yeah, I would look at those liquidity levels, those equal lows that are, significantly below where we're at today, and say like
we annihilated high time frame structure with that move down last year, and then we just put in a lower high into this like really huge demand zone. Like we didn't take out that shoulder. Like the next logical place, I think, is at least to test the bottom of where we went last year. We could bounce from there. But in reality, the question is sort of like, where is demand, right? And demand was kind of at that, was that like 140 or so level last year? Like kind of, but it went really deep through it. Like it actually traded through it. Like that wasn't like strong, super crazy. So I think this is kind of just like a reaction bounce off that level, but I don't know if that level holds if it gets tested again. And then the next level is like $40-$50.
It's just crazy to me to think, because this is not Solana or something. This is like $700 billion market cap.
But I wonder sometimes, like, if Tesla, if like the NASDAQ, if they're actually like ahead of crypto. Like this to me could be what an ETH chart looks like in 5 or 6 months. Like retesting that, like that's the 3K shoulder right there. Go up, put in a lower high at the 3K shoulder. Like that's a fear I have, that we are actually in a very long drawn out process of unwinding this like excess tech like ZERP bubble, right? And like our brains just aren't that good at thinking like it can take that long. Like we can't conceive of this being like a decade long process, even though that's happened in the past.
Did you see Vance Spencer's tweet today?
Yeah, I thought that was a good tweet. Actually, I actually screenshotted it because I wanted to read it on the pod.
Yeah.
Great.
Let's read it out, because I thought it was kind of like aligned with this conversation right now.
Yeah, so Vance tweeted, when no millennials / Zoomers can afford a house and job prospects are limited, don't be surprised when PEs for zeitgeisty tech stocks and crypto go vertical, even with higher rates. Interest rates don't matter to millennials and Zoomers. They have no savings and little prospect to ever have them. Ouch. Even big tech friends are living paycheck to paycheck. All that matters is swinging for the fences, a portfolio optimized for the Instagram lifestyle. This is actually quite rational. Spend more time in Asia and you will understand the crushing paradox for young people. That's a pretty heavy tweet.
I mean, we've talked about this, that like it might make sense for younger people to have some safe stuff, but then like basically a barbell approach where you just have full convexity on the other side. Like if things go up, you go up big.
Yeah, I think that's true. And also I think Vance Spencer is probably right, where like you wouldn't see Tesla get crushed because there's just like so many people that just want to pile into Tesla.
No, but I think what he's saying is actually a reason Tesla would get crushed.
Because there'll be something newer and
like the reason it's already gone to these unsustainable casino levels is because
it was the zeitgeist at the time.
Is because of these people behaving that way. But I think we know that that's not it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And like people aren't going to win. Like their behavior is rational, but it is wildly negative EV.
Right. And then there's going to be a new zeitgeist next year as well.
Yeah, like we've wondered, is there going to be like the zeitgeist over the next decade of like real things, like commodities and energy?
Can I read a quote about positioning and valuation I found today?
Of course you can.
I found it great because we're talking about these things have extremely high valuations. So this quote is from a Substack called Fallacy Alarm, and I subscribe to it. This quote was from the free portion of the article, but it says, positioning trumps valuation. It ultimately determines valuation. If valuation appears overextended when positioning is not, the analyst should revisit their valuation framework. It feels weird for me to say that. The system has hammered all the intricacies of the art of valuation into my brain during business school, the CFA program, and the subsequent decade that I worked in various finance jobs. But I could not be more convinced that the intro above is true. First and foremost, valuation needs to be acknowledged, not traded.
Yes.
Positioning can be traded. It's full of signal. Short where masses have gone, long where they have come from, mean revert everything. And I don't know. I don't know how to like measure positioning in these like.
I was hoping you
stocks.
had some data on positioning.
I do have some positioning.
Have you seen the crowded
charts.
market report?
Which one?
Crowded market report. I forget the guy's name. Jason. His name Jason something. I forget. But I think his newsletter is Crowded Market Report, and he puts out this interesting data. It's basically like large spec, retail spec, and commercial positioning. And he has some thing where he shows when like I forgot what his exact heuristic is, but when there's like a distribution of like commercial here and then like large spec or small spec on the other side, then that's sort of like a get the fuck out of Dodge signal.
I mean, I have some
or
positioning data, but it's like on an asset class, like bonds, staples, equities.
You can do it via futures. I think the CME like publishes like open interest data, and then they have people people like are labeled as like commercial traders or retail traders or whatever.
Yeah, Jordan, you want to pull up the positioning visual number 1? So this one is basically from this month, and it talks about how much overweight hedge fund managers are. It covers about six. See if you can enlarge that. And it covers about $650 billion. And what it measures is on a standard deviation across I think it's like the 20-year median positioning. So this is like long time frame. But what you're seeing is like a 2 standard deviation long over the average for bonds.
What are these fools doing?
And then on the bottom there, you can see like 1.5 standard deviation short on REITs, which you could make a good argument for. But look, if you look 3 ticks above the bottom, equities
yeah,
is sitting there. And if you go to the visual number 2, visual number 2 talks about the increase. I think this is month over month. So you've seen an increase in energy and people dumping out of staples. And I think people were lining into staples like, toilet paper, Procter and Gamble type stuff, thinking it would protect them. But in fact, positioning was so heavy into staples and it kind of unraveled.
So this is the change.
So this is the change in positioning.
Good.
So I don't know like how we would measure it in some of these Magnificent 7 stocks. It would be interesting to find a data source that could tell us, because like it would pair well with that chart, because we've talked about valuation a lot and how it's tough because Tesla could keep going up in terms of valuation, but there's nothing really to
You know what I feel like is actually like an epic trade probably like a long Facebook, short Tesla trade.
So long GARP, growth at a reasonable price.
So like
and short.
I love the GARP basket, and my favorite of the GARP basket is Google. But I love basically all of them because you get like that upside exposure to AI, but you're still trading at like below index multiples. Basically, like I think Google's trading at 20 times forward earnings. Like that's very reasonable. It's very GARPy.
Yeah, on top of like one of the best business models in the
like
world,
with the cash cow, and like
I've spent an enormous amount of money on them and happily give it to them. I wish I could spend more.
And I think I said this on our call when we were planning this episode, but I think this is true. It's like those 4 companies are probably the ones that you wanted to hold for the last 10 years, and they're going to be the ones you want to hold for the next 10 years. It's like very simple, I think.
Yeah.
It's a good chance. And I kind of like that trade because it gives you the exposure to the AI, but it like isolates. I don't know. Like I can't wrap my head around Tesla. Never have been able to. I can wrap my head around Facebook. And the Facebook chart looks really good. The Tesla chart looks really, really, really bad. Like so bad.
When you read that guy's little manifesto there, like that resonated with me so much. And what I've learned, like, because I learned about valuation sort of first and foremost, what I've learned is that valuation doesn't really matter until it does. Like there are times when like during like euphoric bull runs where valuation gets thrown out the window, but when shit is hitting the fan, valuation is your life preserver, and like you can actually rely on a stock's price to hold to its valuation when things are bad.
When a stock's going overextending the valuation, you can get smoked playing the other side.
Yeah.
But you're saying when things are crumbling, that is your anchor.
There's
to like
panic and fear in the markets. Like you can rely on valuation to like hold steady.
Shorting Tesla to me made absolutely no sense. Like early 2022, because like if you know anything about trading price action, right? You look at that chart, it's just like an up only trend. Like you're literally stepping in front of a freight train, right? And we see this with like altcoins and crypto, like stuff like Luna. Like people were like, Luna's a scam. Good luck shorting it. You get blown out, right? But there comes a point where once these things sort of like break those key structural levels, and even when that does happen, they can retrace like crazy amounts. Like they can still do huge moves to the upside, but they often like never put in those higher highs. And it's like kind of like a fine art to short these things, but like if you know how to do it, like they can just actually just go down only for like there's still coins from 2017 that are still just going down.
It just I have PTSD just being a guy who like looks at Tesla a lot and seeing how bad its valuation has been or like how crazy it's been. I would rather just buy the puts instead of actually shorting it. Limit your downside.
Collect the income.
No, that'd be buying the puts.
Oh,
so I would be buying the. I'm
puts.
betting against it the same way, but at least I know what my downside is. Like,
there's no free lunch though, and then you just get annihilated by time decay.
Yeah, but you're talking about this thing happening by December. If I buy it out, 500 days from now. Like nobody's expecting this thing to go to $40. Like you can buy some puts and make a killing.
Like for a penny.
Yeah.
Should buy some leaps.
Yeah.
Some leap puts in Tesla.
It's an interesting play because it's probably not priced in.
Definitely not.
I doubt it. But yeah, I'm just kind of scared at like what that means as like a harbinger to like all of the stuff we like. If Tesla could do something like that, then like crypto, like in all of the coins in it could do something like that.
I know there's not a lot of signal in this, but like it does seem a little too soon. Like the economy's still growing, inflation is maybe hovering a little too high. That's fine, but like
it has normalized quite a bit.
Yeah, normalized. Job growth is still there.
I was talking to some people in the last week, and they were telling me they're having trouble finding jobs now.
Oh, so that's funny. In the last. So how much? It's Wednesday, so 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten 3 phone calls from people like, "Hey, I got a buddy looking for a job. Can you talk to him?" And it was like we were joking. I was like, "Is this job fair week at this company?" Like, and they're all great people. They're highly skilled, highly skilled, and they're looking for the next thing.
But they're all from the same company?
No. They all came to us being
Got it.
as referrals, like, hey, you should talk to Nick and these guys and see if they have a spot for you. But it was just odd that this week I found 3 highly skilled individuals being like, hey, I'm kind of looking for the next thing. And granted, they're not like on need to find a job this week type of people, but
that's interesting.
Yeah,
though.
anecdote.
And they weren't the first person. Like I had a couple of these things come up, and it was just like, oh, it like has everything just shifted suddenly. Like, and it's kind of funny that you have this. I know these are just anecdotes.
Yeah,
but like they are anecdotes, but also like the charts are telling us something.
But that also is an indication that tightening is working, and then maybe we just go and resume up only mode because this is an indication that tightening.
I want to be clear. I still think we go up only mode at some point, and I still think the S&P just rips to 6,000, and I still think
like in the next 3 to 6 months, or like you're talking about
3 months. I don't think is like a thing anymore.
Right.
I think that like the conditions have definitely. There was a hope that the dollar would kind of reverse at one of the earlier, and it just did not. Like, and I don't want to fade. I'm not fading that thing right now. It's just like you have to be dumb to fade that, I think. So not going to do it.
Do you know the ticker off your 3x levered short euro by any chance?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's probably like EUR.
Sounds fun.
DUM.
DUMB.
Yeah. Adam had a good comment on Facebook in the chat. He said the upside and the VR tech is underrated. Yeah. I don't know how much it's priced in, but like I'm extraordinarily bullish on that after watching did you guys see the Lex?
No, I didn't. You told me to watch it. I didn't watch the Lex for you.
Man, yeah, the Lex Zuck interview, it like gave me that I don't know, like I feel like I'm good at like recognizing inflection points and stuff and being like, oh, this is a thing.
Well, you mentioned it got out of the uncanny valley. Like it got realistic enough where it didn't feel like you're in a fucking cartoon or like a Pixar movie.
It's a big deal. I could see it just shaping so much stuff in our life. And if like Facebook is the company putting that out, like
I was in St. George, Utah last week. So I saw some very large property for relatively cheap compared to San Diego. So you're telling me I have the authority to move and wreck the podcast as long as we can go VR.
I feel like we'll be like a full like VR pod at some point.
Wow.
I'll predict that in our future.
Okay.
I think so too.
You want to loop back to Coinbase chart before we kind of continue on? We didn't get to it.
Oh, yeah. I guess we could loop back real quick.
It's here. Trust me. It's in one of these tabs.
There
it is.
Okay, so normally I would say, okay, this is like a classic example of a chart that has had some like run up and now is broken structure, and it's just going to kind of go down and test demand. Where is the untapped demand? It's like in that $50 range. The thing that gives me pause with this chart is that we're and this is why I think it's like choppy right now. We're at like the yearly mid range. So these ranges, like the high and low point that price trades at, they're like very, very important, especially on really high time frames, like the monthly or like the yearly. When price is like at the 50% of a range, and this is like a good tip, like if you're trading, this is where people get annihilated because they're trying to like chase moves up and down and left and right. But the 50% of a range is like equilibrium. Like that is like balanced price. Like by nature, there's not a lot of edge there. And price is like, you know, stochastic and random to an extent. So even like about some mean, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down, right? But those moves when you're at the equilibrium of a range tend to be like very noisy. So what you probably want to do is like wait for like a breakout either up or down, you know, for some sort of confirmation, and then to probably not fade that move. So I think if we get like a sharp move like above like 82 or something, I'll be like, yeah, all right, I guess I'm wrong. And
so that's because you basically just answered my question, but like let's say you move up above 82, is there something that you want to see that affirms that sort of bullish move? Is it a volume indicator, or is it like a weekly candle that closes above that level or something? Like what to you signifies, okay, this is real versus like this is something I'd want to fade?
I don't use volume at all. I know people do.
I like volume.
I've never found any edge in it, to be honest. It's something I tinkered around with in the past, but I don't really use any of those profiles anymore. One general rule I have is, right, like if there's like a critical high or low and like the violating of that high or low is like a key shift in the structure, right? What I generally want to see is like a close of a candle, right? And this is like more like art than science, right? And it's like the higher the time frame of that candle close, like the more significant it is. Like if we break 82 on the 1 minute candle, okay, not very high signal. If you break 82 with like a weekly close, that's pretty high signal, right? And then when I see these shifts, I'm generally not trying to get long or short as soon as the shift happens, right? Like I believe price like moves in these ups and downs, right? And I think after you take like a high like that, you're going to come back down. You're going to kind of retest like the down move that gave you the high, and like somewhere in there is where I would look to buy or take off a hedge or whatever. Like occasionally you do get these times where price just absolutely nukes up or nukes down and you never get a chance to get in or out, and those can be dicey situations, and you can still sometimes navigate them on the lower time frames, but I feel like 9 out of 10 times like you can be patient and kind of wait for price to come to you.
So long-term bullish still?
Yes, super long-term bullish.
Just to not, just to
I
make
still
sure
think
we
these are
include
good
that.
levels. It's still like a good like yearly level, but if you're like objectively looking at where is demand, and if you're objectively looking at what is the rest of the market doing, yes, it's at the 50-50 range equilibrium. Yes, it could break up from here for sure, but like probabilistically speaking, if the rest of the world is going to burn down, people probably aren't going to be sending a bunch of money into Coinbase.
That's true. Calcium in the chat says all the chart screen grabs were named untitled. I support Jordan.
Yeah.
So if people don't know, Jordan's our producer, trying to find which fucking tab is which goddamn
19
chart.
tabs named untitled.
Yeah. He's like, I can't do it.
Peach sent $20, said love you guys.
Oh, Feech, we love you too,
love you
man.
too.
Boy.
Yeah. Wish I'd give that guy a big hug.
Did you guys stay in the same house at Permissionless?
Yeah.
You and Feech?
Yeah.
I'm bummed I didn't get
We
to
had a
meet
good
him.
time. He's a great dude. Everybody there was a great dude. I know I've already showered everybody with praise. So
Well, I feel like your coin rant was like in so many words, basically just saying that David Hoffman's upcoming bullish episode on coin on Bankless is
that
a
was
top.
another
Is a
thing.
top.
I
Is that what you're
wanted
saying?
to-
Are you poking him? Are you just doing this just to time it with his bull episode?
I felt a
rude,
lot. Look, I definitely felt a lot better talking about coin at $45 on the show when nobody was talking about it than I do now after it's already run up to 120, and then like Bankless is doing like specials on it. Not to hate on Bankless, right? The generalized point here is that like once these things come into the like the popular zeitgeist of your niche crypto, it's like, okay, this is sort of like Elon coming on SNL and Doge. It's like,
Saying
okay, well,
Doge to the
who
moon.
else? Right? We've already acknowledged that there's not really outside money coming into crypto yet. So like, who is going to hear like a Bankless episode or whatever episode and get like, oh my God, like I have to dump all the money into coin? I don't know. Like,
I can see that. It represents the end of that type of investor bringing money
Yeah,
in.
but we're not in it for that. We're in it for multi-years, and we're in it for everyone who's not into crypto, who's not in this every week.
Well, right now I'm in it till 2026. So
Yeah, I mean, our calls are dated out till 2025, end of 2025.
Oh, 25, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. And like, I still think they go well over $300, $400, $500. Like I totally think that. I think it could do a 10x. I totally believe that. The volatility in the stock is like insane, right? And like you can eat some serious drawdowns. So if you're like a long-term person and you're in it for $700, then it's like, yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter if you buy it at 72 or, I mean, it kind of does, but not really. It doesn't matter if you DCA at 72 or 45 or whatever. You're good. But it matters for somebody who's sitting there thinking like, oh my God, Steven said Coinbase is going to $700. I'm all in at $84, and then it like nukes to $50, right? Like that's not good.
Well, it's also not financial advice.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm hoping that volatility on the upside rewards our option plays, because I'm doing common stock and options, and so when that volatility peaks, I don't know what it's going to look like, but like it'll reward the option plays.
But to be fair, those options aren't that cheap. You know, you're probably
They're
paying
not.
$3 grand each. So you know, like
That's exactly what I was paying.
there might be investors out there who are like, I have one shot to take, and I think I probably agree with Steven.
I made a lot of money selling calls. Like the
Yeah.
premiums are pretty juicy. So that's like mostly
Naked
how I
or
hit. No, I own the stock, so
Yeah,
I
so
sold
okay.
covered calls. So I'm hedged. But like I was surprised by how much premium I got for it.
Well, let's never do anything naked on this podcast. So let's talk. Nvidia is one of those like other stocks we were talking about, and they're in the news, Eric. And I know you kind of wanted to like talk about this topic as a group. So I'm curious where you want to go with this.
I'm glad it's you two here because you're sort of the geopolitical guys. But I don't know if you saw this. Nvidia just got sort of smacked. The U.S. government said they're no longer allowed to sell their A800 or H800 chips to China. And that's actually, so when I saw that, I was like, oh, wow. And I was thinking like, is that a big deal? China represents 20% of their revenue. So that's pretty significant. But then I went down a bit of a rabbit hole there. I was thinking like, okay, so what actually is this? It turns out it's a follow-on of a measure taken in October of last year, which was even a follow-on of a measure taken in 2020 under the Trump administration. So I guess I'll walk through what happened. We started by sanctioning Huawei. Huawei at the time was the number one seller of smartphones in the world.
Were they spying on us? Is that what they were doing?
I think we just termed it like a national security problem. So maybe. So I don't even know the why, but what I know is that we restricted sales of chips to Huawei. At the time, they had 18% of global market share of smartphones, which was higher than Apple and Samsung.
Wow.
And after those measures were taken, they've almost been eliminated. They're like 2% global market share now.
Damn.
So that worked, I guess, in quotes. But then they expanded the restrictions beyond Huawei to 7 other companies in China. And then in October of 2022, this was like the watershed moment, I think, that nobody's talking about. I think this is like why I wanted to talk about it, because this is actually huge, is that we said we won't sell any advanced chips to China, period. And that's like to stifle their advanced computing industry.
So prior to that, NVIDIA could sell to China, but they couldn't sell the most advanced version, called like 2 or 3 generations before that. And it looks like it caused like a 10% performance hit.
Right.
But like probably not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and if you're China, you'd be like, sure, I'll just take 90% of your best one. No
Right.
problem. So then when they cancel that, that's when I started looking at it. And what I found is that there's this the acronym is like BTFR or something. It's like the basically what it means is that the U.S. was able to designate any product that had U.S. IP at anywhere along the supply chain. That product is deemed a U.S. product, and it's restricted from being sold to China.
Right. So obviously American companies can't sell these chips to China. And obviously, like, I don't know, maybe companies in Japan, South Korea.
So yeah, like another thing I learned is just like in the chip banking process, it's fascinating, like how complex this supply chain is. It's unbelievable. So like there are specialized players all along the supply chain doing very complex things, and I want to like illustrate how complex some of this stuff is. Like, they're printing on a chip at a size that is 1/1000th the size of a red blood cell. It's so fucking advanced, and in order to do that, they use this thing called EUV, extreme ultraviolet light, that burns plasma 40 times hotter than the sun to like imprint that onto the chip. And this, like, there's one company in the world that can do it at like that small of a size and that like advanced, and it's like this company in the Netherlands, ASML. It's a publicly traded company, ticker symbol ASML, and it's been said that their machine is the most complex thing ever designed by mankind. Wow. That one machine. And that is like one step in a process that requires 100 steps to design these advanced chips and like there are contributors from, like you said, Japan, Taiwan, Netherlands, etc., South Korea. And all of these nations have agreed to blacklist sales to China.
Yeah, so like in that value chain, there's design, which obviously is like the software design, the chip design, all the intellectual property. Then there's actual fabrication, which requires the materials and chemicals. And then there's the actual equipment to fabricate these things. And then you have all the assembly and testing shit that has to go on. So, a country to say we want to be self-reliant and be able to make our own semiconductors, it's a big ask to put an entire value chain that's that complex, that requires so many inputs.
That's what I was wondering. My first thought was, well, China's just going to vertically integrate and they're going to be able to design these things themselves. And then when I found out how complex this stuff actually is, one of ASML's machines cost $200 million.
Oh.
So like for China to just recreate all of that, it seems impossible.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a lot of things that China can do to like thwart those sanctions, right? There's obviously they could just try to get around them,
circumvent,
right? Yeah, circumvent, like just break the rules.
So like because we have agreement from like Japan, South Korea, Netherlands, Taiwan to restrict sales to China. That doesn't mean that like a country like India can't buy chips and then sell those to China.
Yeah. So I saw something. Maybe it's in the same article we both read, but like. a Chinese company could have a subsidiary in a country like India and could get that technology, those chips, that equipment, that IP, and obviously still use it in India, but then all the IP, the knowledge can still get transferred to the parent company in China. So that's probably like a loophole. And I imagine the US is trying to understand how best to tighten the border controls of this like complex technology, which involves human brain power, chemicals, materials, and actually this like complex machinery, which can't be easy to do. But I was trying to pull up a timeline of everything the US has done since like 2022, and it is like a monthly thing. They tighten it every single month.
Yeah, it's getting more and more stringent. Like the trajectory is pretty clear. Like,
yeah, we're in a Cold War, a technological Cold War, and I kind of forget the second order, third order consequences. Like the motivations behind it, I think are sound, right? Like you don't want China to take an advanced role above the US when it comes to AI. We obviously know these chips are like necessary in order to advance in AI for two reasons. Like one, the obvious economic, capabilities. Like they're on a massive demographic downfall, and the only thing that could save them is a massive increase in productivity, which would likely come from AI. So if you limit them, you kind of like write their downfall into the history books if they can't produce some huge leap in productivity. But then maybe the bigger one that most government officials are worried about is just using AI in weapon systems.
Yes, surveillance, weaponry,
all that stuff. So like if you can thwart their ability to import these semiconductors at the advanced stage, the US always has, call it, one generation leg up. And I kind of like that motivation. Obviously, it's going to force China to innovate on their own, and it is a benefit of a socialist system, right? They can direct all of the resources of an entire nation, with carrot and stick. Carrot being like, hey, here's some subsidies, here's some tax breaks, here's some money, and then stick like, no, you're going to do what we tell you to do. And as a country of 1 billion people, we're going to make this our top effort. And it seems like that's been the number one technological like objective for the last 5 years. I don't think China's been dumb to this move that's going to happen. It seems like they were steps ahead, but the enormity of what they need to accomplish is still kind of over them.
Right. And didn't you read somewhere that they are able to create sort of like semi-advanced chips in a vertically integrated fashion?
Yeah, I forget the name of the phone, but there was a phone that like debuted recently in the last 2 or 3 months, and people were surprised that it had this high-tech advanced chip in it. I want to say 7 nanometers. Don't quote me on that. I don't even know if I can make chips in that. But that's the number that came to mind. And but I think the issue is that they can't necessarily make it at scale.
Yes.
Which sounds kind of weird to me that they couldn't, but maybe they were able to make a defined amount for this phone. And, let's say they were able to accomplish this one feat. I think we're blocking them for the system and the resources for innovation. Like,
yeah, because it's not just a restriction of the sale of the chips; it's also a restriction of the sale on the equipment that's required to create the chip.
Yeah. So here's another few things I was jotting down that they could do. Like, it seems like the key countries are the U.S. Netherlands is a massive country. They need help from Netherlands, Japan, South Korea, and obviously Taiwan. Taiwan, there's a clear friction there. And it seems like they've been making diplomatic kind of warnings to the Netherlands, basically saying there will be consequences. We're not going to tell you what the consequences are, but we can't swallow this, were some of the quotes. Like, as in, we're going to do something about this.
Yeah,
and
it seems pretty ominous, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so if you look at the stocks, like ASML in particular, if you look at the line item for expenses of cybersecurity expense, it's like double-digit growth every year, because they're getting apparently thousands of cyber attacks a year. Thousands. So imagine multiple a day, trying to poke and prod and get IP, get technology, try to do anything they can to subvert this because I think they understand it's kind of important for their long-term superiority and maybe survival. I don't know. So they're obviously doing that with Japan and South Korea, and like whatever geopolitical tensions, I imagine that will be the chip that they will bring into play in whatever negotiations happen, whether it's about oil or other resources or other things. I was also trying to understand, we import a lot of stuff from China. Like they have leverage over us, and it doesn't seem like they've necessarily pulled that card yet. And I was looking where they have leverage the most. Obviously, all of our TVs and all the products probably in this studio, likely come from there. That's one. But it seems like the rare earth minerals are the biggest lever they could pull,
that's
right?
one that I was like drilling into, because on the one hand, we have like the IP and the tech, but then they have the rare earth minerals that are required to build this stuff. And, for certain ones like gallium nitride, they control 98% of the world's production. So I don't know. I think in the report that we shared, the response was basically that, well, the U.S., the problem with these rare earth minerals is more of like a political constraint. Like, do we want to harm our environment by digging this stuff up? And it's not as big of a deal if they want to play that card. You play the game theory out, sort of U.S. still wins.
Yeah, so you're saying, okay, let's say they do that. They restrict exports of rare earth minerals that are rare earth materials that we need. Then there's a political response in the U.S. that says, cool, you want to mine these in the U.S.? Here's your permit, like 24-hour turnaround time, like get rid of the red tape. The question is, amongst the U.S. and all the allies, do the
deposits are there according to the research I was reading. It's like in Alaska and Wyoming and the Dakotas, like it is there. It's just
they're all
like,
there.
But we don't have the appetite.
I wonder what it would take, because we obviously, politicians will be keen to this response, but will the average American care? Like if they see some, I don't know, what was the one you mentioned? Gallium
Nitride.
Gallium nitride, like blocks exports to the U.S. They're not going to care, but they see you're drilling in their national park. Will there be the political fortitude?
I think the U.S. rallies around a common enemy pretty quick.
Yeah.
If it's like China's doing this to us, then
right.
I think that can galvanize a country.
I don't know. I think that's where we could see some retaliation. But also, did you see this? Micron is Micron a U.S. company? Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're a publicly traded company.
Mm-hmm.
You're in Idaho, right?
Yeah. So China did this extended cybersecurity review, and essentially it's a form of retaliation. Like, hey, we're going to slow down this review, and basically what they're threatening is Micron could no longer serve Chinese customers, and it sounds like it would be a potential loss of $3.3 billion to Micron, and there could be a whole set of those. So 26% of chip demand by corporate headquarters of the electronic device maker comes from China. 35% of chip demand by location of where the device is, where it's assembled, is from China. And then 24% of chip demand by location of where the end user is, the end device is, comes from China. So there is this kind of like, tripwire on both sides. Like,
totally, dude. Imagine like the economic impact to our companies in the S&P. Like back to Steven's charts. Like we could easily go lower on these charts if our earnings are getting crushed too. Which, like I think in the case of Nvidia, for instance, you have enough, like you have sufficient domestic demand to last the next 2 years or something.
Right.
But then like the runway is getting much shorter if you take away a quarter of your customer base.
Yeah, so you're saying this little 5% drop we saw, and I think it was another 5% drop in NVIDIA because of this, and it was all over CNBC, limiting their sales to China. It could be just a first hint of what's to come if this Cold War, just kind of technological Cold War, kind of gets out of hand.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm guessing it's like it rears its ugly head on like the length of the runway more so than in the near term results.
So I was trying to think of like what's the net. Like we're consumers in the U.S., we're investors in the U.S. So where does it land? And like maybe this is more fourth turning stuff that we've talked about, where inflation is higher just because there's more geopolitical supply chain insecurities. So higher inflation seems one, just having to pay more for goods. I think Peter Zion said that China can produce semiconductors. They can produce a lot of them, but they do it for the low level stuff like your microwave.
Yeah.
And so we maybe don't have the capabilities, the capacity to do that ourselves. So those little devices get more expensive. And then the S&P has clear vulnerabilities to not being able to access the Chinese market. I don't know. Those are the only two I could came up with. They're kind of a long-term thematic. So it's not like, hey, let's position around it. But
and I guess my other question was like, does this Cold War just stay cold forever? You know, like we are positioning around Taiwan, like how influential Taiwan is in this supply chain or value chain. And it was interesting for me to read about Taiwan's perspective. Like there was a term that was used, they call it the Silicon Shield. So like Israel has the Iron Dome. Taiwan has the Silicon Shield that says like, we're so important to you guys, you will all defend us because, you need us.
So that's fascinating. I read in that report that Chinese companies were offering 5x salaries or 5x total comp for anyone in Taiwan who's in the industry to come work for them. But it comes with a catch, is that you most likely will not be employed for life by them. Like they're literally to like suck the juice out of your brain and then ditch you, and you probably won't be able to get a job again in Taiwan. Yeah. You won't have a fallback.
What about, so there's obviously a U.S. incentive to bring Taiwan's fabrication onshore to be in the U.S. And I think they've tried to build something in Phoenix. Yeah. And because Taiwan is militarily protected by the United States, they kind of have to abide by those wishes. But at the same time, by doing that, they're eroding their Silicon Shield.
Well, yeah, and then they see Vivek Ramaswamy up on a Republican presidential debate and saying, yeah, we'll defend Taiwan until we have our own capabilities, and then once we build them, then we won't.
Yeah, fuck them.
He's saying it pretty clear, which, I mean, logically makes for a sound strategy, I think. But yeah, I mean, these things will take well over a decade to build in the United States.
And then President Xi told his military, he's like, be prepared to invade Taiwan by 2027.
Right.
Which doesn't say that we will do it by 2027. Just be prepared to do it.
Oof.
So all of this to me,
it's a lot of breathing room.
It's a lot of time, I guess. They don't even sell calls that long.
I don't. Oh man, I really hope that doesn't happen, because we obviously import a lot of basic goods from China. I'm talking about our company.
Yeah, you.
And that would just be cut off. You just wouldn't have inventory anymore. And if you don't have inventory, you don't have revenue.
That'd be brutal.
You'd cut off every single semiconductor from China too. You wouldn't just cut off
the advanced
these
ones.
select companies and these advanced ones. You'd be like, none for you. And pulling back from that is, it takes a while to unravel that kind of shit.
It'd be such a weird world to live in, Maybe not. Maybe it'd be like a world that we used to inhabit, but that's not a world we've inhabited for the last couple decades, right? We've basically had the opening of China sort of mask all of these other problems that exist globally, and we've been able to have abundant, cheap goods.
Which president let China into the World Trade Organization? Was that Clinton or Bush?
Well, I mean, Nixon was the one who originally opened it, right?
Yeah.
So I think it started there. Yeah, it's strange to think we could live in this world where there's this weird dichotomy of insane digital abundance and really severe physical scarcity. People are just not going to be able to just buy stuff that. It's going to be really strange, and obviously I think the earnings of companies could be hit really bad if that happens. If consumers just don't have enough money to buy all the things they used to buy.
The age of cheap crap is over, is what you're saying.
But the other side of that is like, I think a company like Facebook could like thrive in that world, right? Because I think if you live in a world of like this physical scarcity, then you start substituting, like, what can I do? Well, I can use something like VR tech to simulate the stuff that I can't do or experience anymore.
I hate to break it to you, but that Oculus headset probably is going to not advance very much if everyone's not going to be able to get their hands on it.
No, that thing's going to get a lot cheaper relative to now. Like, yes, some of those components will get more expensive, but like all in all, right? Like if you can buy that one thing, it's like, it'll be like how there's, people who are in poverty today in the US, they own like 2 televisions, right? And they have like, it's going to be a similar thing where like, yeah, of course you need the VR. Like your life will be miserable if you don't have if you can't go like, it'll be like Ready Player One, I guess we wrote a book on this.
Yeah.
But I could totally see that happening. And like, yeah, we really take for granted like how much abundant, cheap crap we have.
Well, I like this topic because I think it's real alpha because it's very underplayed and it's a slow burn until it's not. And hot wars probably get most of the attention on news channels, but you don't see this one, which probably impacts the everyday American or everyday European, like wherever you are, more potentially.
Yeah, the ramifications are potentially insane, but potentially.
Yeah. All right, let's go on. So we're going to talk about this Tim Urban book. It's called "What's Our Problem." You want to keep because we're not going to like dive into the whole book right now, but you want to key up what you want to go into.
So one of our community members, the great Below. Actually, I don't think he launched the book club. Who launched the book club? Oh, I'm
you're
so
gonna
sorry.
get
I
some
can't.
heat
I know.
for this.
It's like everybody has these strange avatar names. It's hard to remember them all. But one of our community members was like, "Hey, we should launch like a book club. Like, seems like a good group to do it with." And people were like, "Yeah, book club. That's awesome." But Below suggested that we read this book.
Well, he didn't also suggest. He quite
Yeah,
ferociously lobbied in person.
We talked in a previous episode about how this man is basically like, worships at the altar of Tim Urban, and
but like it lived up to the hype.
he probably walks around with like one of those signs that you wear, like ringing a bell, and it's got like the drawings on it. Yeah. What he does in his spare time, he hangs out at intersections.
Love you, below.
But yeah, he was like, we should read this book. And I took a quick look at it and I was like, yes, it's like really interesting. And like those of you who live in the world today know that we're having a hard time getting along. And it seems like it's a very divisive political climate. It's just a lot of stuff happening. So this book by Tim Urban tries to like lay out a framework for why this happened and how to fix it. And it's been super interesting because it really, I think, hits at the heart of why we're here and like why our community is here. And like we've talked a lot about like what is it that like kind of unites us all. Listen, we're not like all crypto investors, we're not all Republicans, we're not all Democrats, we're not all moderates, we're not all like and this book like finally gave me a framework for how to think about
Alfalfa.
Yeah. And it's a super long book, but I just wanted to like key in on one section, just like the very beginning of the book, which is this concept of the ladder, right? Where it's not just like what you think and what you believe, like the spectrum, but it's also how you think. And I think what's interesting about this book is like he puts out this like very easy to understand framework for how people sort of process and promote and fight for their ideas. So you kind of have this like x-axis with like
the x-axis is what you think,
what you believe, right? And then there's this y-axis. Oh, look at that. We got a visual.
We're getting it ready.
Oh.
I just put it in there now.
That's sweet.
Nice.
Wow.
Okay, and this is the y-axis.
And this is the most important axis. Not what you think, but how you think.
How you think.
So there's this battle between your sort of higher human brain, the brain that is, can think and study Socrates and do things that your dog can't do, right? And then you sort of got your mammalian brain in the middle, which is kind of like, more like emotional, and then like you've got like the sort of primitive reptilian brain, which is just kind of pure like fight or flight,
survival mode,
right?
Yeah.
Kind of all the way, right? And so as you go up or down the ladder, right, you are at the top of the ladder, your higher mind is completely in control. And at the very bottom of the ladder, the primitive mind is in control. And he goes on to build on this like concept, right? Because he talks about like communities that sort of coalesce around these ideas, right? And we know that on Twitter, like there are really large communities on the left and the right that have really coalesced around the primitive end of the ladder. Like they yell at you for everything. They're fighting. They sort of vehemently stick to every Tumaju is the I knew it. Damn it.
He started the book club.
Thank you, Adam. So Tumaju started book club. I'm definitely probably not pronouncing that right. So sorry in advance, but yeah, shout out. Great idea. But yeah, at the top of the top of the ladder, right, where you've got this like kind of higher mind thing, and the collection of people doing that, he calls it like, you want to have like, you want to build like an idea lab, which is this community of people who are using their higher brain. I was like, oh, that's what Alfalfa strives to be.
Yeah.
It strives to be an idea lab. It's not a place where everybody thinks the same thing. It's not a place where everybody's trying to forward a particular agenda, but it is a place where everybody thinks in a sort of particular systematic way that is like kind of, he uses this avatar of like the scientist to describe somebody who is like kind of like at the very top of that rung. Somebody who is like evaluating ideas and holding complex thoughts in his head and like not married to things, and who's like really motivated by truth seeking. And I was like, oh, that's what we are, or at least that's what like we strive to be, or like the people in the community sort of strive to be. So
yeah,
definitely wanted to shout that out.
Didn't he kind of put the scientific method as kind of like the system for that higher mind, the top rung of the ladder?
Yeah, so I think if I'm not mistaken, he has like the scientist, the sports fan, the lawyer, and then the zealot all the way at the bottom.
Oh man, and sometimes the best way to understand like the top rung of the ladder is actually explain the bottom rung, because it just displays the exact opposite. And he gave this like really good analogy of how, I think he said moths or gnats, you look at them and you're like, why are they like swarming around this light on my house? And why are they just like literally diving headfirst into this bug zapper that has a light on it? And he shows that the reptilian mode of their brain used to follow the moon to find out where to go. So they followed light to figure out direction and which way to move. But that part of your brain doesn't update every day. It maybe updates every 500 or 1,000 years. And I was thinking about, I listened to that and I was like, man, you walk around, you're like, why is everyone on their phone like nonstop? And you realize that like when you fall to that bottom rung, you will do things that are that directly harm you, that like, might end in your species extinction, but just because your reptilian software has never updated. And that analogy was, I was like, started to be a little introspective, like, shit, what do I do where my reptilian software hasn't updated and has no chance of being updated? That's hurting me. But anyway, that gave me like a good understanding of the top rung of the ladder, which is the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Like having a thesis, testing it, actually looking towards areas where you could be
towards competing arguments, like trying to poke holes in your own ideas. Like that's the high rung.
Yeah, I mean, zealotry, thinking about ideas like as a zealot, basically the idea is you. It is not only like who you are, more importantly, it's like who your group is. And that's like the primitive brain is very focused around group mentality, because like we're tribal creatures, and the group was our survival mechanism. And we want to be in the herd. We don't want to be isolated from the herd. Being isolated from the herd is dangerous. Going against the herd is dangerous. So people who are political zealots, they basically sort of start from the point of like, this idea is who I am, and I am going to sort of defend it in the face of all logic. There's basically nothing that can convince me of otherwise. And like my goal is like not even so much to convince you, but to destroy you because you are like the opposite tribe who is sort of, so that's the extreme end, right? And then you have like the scientist on the top end of the ladder who is completely divorced his or her personality from the ideas themselves and is seeking to like evaluate the idea on its merit and to stress test the idea, and like is mainly in the pursuit of truth, not in the pursuit of the defense of one's group ideology.
It's about what's right, not who's right.
Yeah. And then he has like these nuanced ones in the middle where like you have the sports fan, which is like a rung below the scientist, where you're like,
I like that one.
Like you can be persuaded, right? The sports fans can be persuaded, but they're really like rooting their ideas on. Like they've married them to an extent. Like they and if we're being honest, like we are mostly sports fans by default. Like even us who like to try to say like we're like, oh, these like high level thinkers, we very frequently slip into sports fan
I would say
mode.
more often than not, if I had to be honest about myself, is like, yes, I'm happy to watch the game, but I'm clearly rooting for a certain outcome. And my biases, my like logical biases probably push me to the one outcome I would like to see happen. And I'm looking for reinforcing data that I can point out to like, yes, my team's winning.
Yeah. Even if it's like subconsciously or whatever.
Right.
I think where this stuff really gets supercharged too is like he goes from the individual model and he starts talking about like what does this look like with group behavior, because we're group people, or a species of tribes. And he said like, well, at the the top of the ladder, when you get a bunch of scientists together sort of collectively thinking, like that's a genie. It's this like kind of gigabrain kind of like sharing of ideas like beyond a person. It's like this like network, right? And it came to mind what we saw during the superconductor. What a time it was. But like when we were on X, like we saw all of these people working in like real time, like across the globe,
Testing
which is all
ideas.
the shared brain power, testing ideas and like really collaborating and like working as a cohesive unit to like make something great happen, which is so refreshing to see because it's so the opposite of what you usually see on Twitter. And then the other end of the spectrum, he talks about this idea of the golem. The golem is this like collection of like emotional brains, like emotional primitive brains all merged together. They create this thing called the golem. And he says the golem is like really, really destructive, right? Because if like the other side to you has turned into a golem, the only defense against the golem is to build your own golem.
Bigger golem.
Build a bigger golem. And then your golems are just hitting each other with sticks. Like your genie can't defeat the golem. And he's like, this kind of mirrors what happened in like prior human history, right? Like when your neighbors started getting like all angry and warring and they came on your doorstep, you couldn't like bust out your lab coat and your whiteboard and like, no, they were coming to burn down your village. You had to make your own thing to defend that, right? So it creates this like nasty environment where once one side turns into a golem, it forces a golem to rise up on the other side. And then you end up with answer to the other side's thing. But it's like this like never ending feedback loop where each of these things have to keep getting bigger and nastier and more polarized as an answer to the other side's sort of thing. And that I think we see that.
So hold on, because if that's the only answer, then is there a way out? And we talked about this briefly because we do a live chat or a live video conference on Thursdays in our Discord at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and we talked about this briefly. But Stephen, do you think that there's a way out of where we are now, which is kind of like two golems battling it out, when ideally everything would be sort of higher minded?
Yeah, we talked about this a little last week during the book club, and I think me and Below sort of had the same generalized, prescription, which is that the only way to do this is to sort of pill a critical mass of like individual people who aren't participating in this, right? And to make that side enough that they just like stop tolerating this happening from society, for the rest of society, and that those people can be these little nodes that go out into the world and like pill a bunch of other people. And if you can get enough people going out and just like breaking everybody of this spell, then like maybe you can settle in a world where people are thinking again instead of like feeling and being tribal. But it's a huge undertaking, because those people they just don't coalesce together in the same way that the emotional.
Yeah, like we even found a trouble with it. What tribe are we in? Where we actually don't belong to like the typical tribes, but maybe the tribe.
But now we do have a tribe, which I think is interesting. Like I think humans need tribes, and I think like a lot of people who are good like they've been lost floating through space because they're like, oh, I'm not a tribal, I'm a higher thinker, and like that's not anything anybody can coalesce around. And so a lot of movements like that are like that. Libertarian party is like a good example of this. It's just like this collection of people, like they're predisposed to not be like that, and so it's just this. It's like herding cats, and like there's no underlying kind of thing holding all, and it just doesn't work.
Well, how do you think it? Like, do you think that we have like the red and the blue, or the left and the right, and then they bring in the gray tribe? Do you think that plays a role in how we sort of identify, or would you say that we're gray tribe?
Well, by gray, are you saying a third party or like
you're talking
non-party?
You're talking about Balaji's.
I guess I'm layering on Balaji's framework, which says that there's like, the left and the right, and then there's like a third one, which is like the tech tribe, which he terms as gray tribe.
Okay.
Wait, where were we talking about this?
That was in the live chat.
It was
on Thursday.
in the live chat. Okay. I didn't think it was in the live chat for some reason. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting idea. That it's another way of sort of looking at the world, that we have like the red tribe and the blue tribe, but like there's also a lot of people who don't fit in with those tribes, and so Balaji came up with like the gray tribe, and because he also has this kind of paradigm of like, what does he have? He has like woke capital and crypto capital, and he has like this idea of basically like, communism versus like the free market and like these kind of things. And he said like a lot of what it means to be blue is to embrace like, that's woke capital. That's like the kind of like the communist, not that everybody who's blue is communist, but there's like this like kind of strong underpinning of that sort of collectivism in the blue tribe.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even tribalism, it's collectivism. Like tribalism, I think, is a little different. Like you can be tribal, but not collectivist. And he's saying that there's this group of these like thinkers, and like he's putting them all under the the tech tribe. But in reality, they extend like far beyond tech. But tech is like a good kind of visual for those people, because you have all of these like smart entrepreneurial people who are think of themselves as like liberal thinkers, and they are progressive, but they like very much feel like they don't fit in with like when you think of like San Francisco and like all the bad stuff you see about like modern day San Francisco, it clashes with the sort of prototypical like tech person from San Francisco, especially the one who was sort of like Balaji, and he's like proposed this union between the reds and the grays, because there is this like actual intersection there. And I was telling Eric, I remember on like the call last week, I was like, it's really interesting because like, I can actually see like a society of reds and grays working just fine together. But if you took what was left of society, like all of the blues who weren't great, and you made a society, like I feel like it wouldn't function at all. I feel like
oh my God, you actually
disaster.
I don't know if I want to say this on a podcast, but
well,
you actually called
probably
them,
don't.
You called them.
You were going to say it?
Okay, I won't go there. But yeah,
it couldn't have been that bad.
What's Thomas Sowell's? I don't know if this ties in, but what's Thomas Sowell's? He talks about like two visions or two...
The Conflict of Visions is
yes.
his book. It's a great book.
Because one of them includes like... there's always like a... I feel like there's someone who gets... There's a victim and a winner in one of the visions he talks about. I don't know. Do you remember the two visions?
I think it's the Rousseauian vision, like Rousseau versus Hobbes. Hobbes is a very like state of nature philosopher. And it sort of fits in with this, like what we consider today, I guess, to be like a more right-wing mindset of like state of nature. What are your natural rights in the world? And government exists just to sort of protect, your natural rights and the state of nature, and prevent and like offer some minimal structure of society so that somebody doesn't come in and like harm you. Which is also something that like Tim Urban talks about in the book a lot. It's good. Versus like there's this other idea that like we actually talked about this. We talked about like the veil of ignorance. This idea of like constructing society as though a metaphorical veil was placed over one's head, and you had to be born in the world tomorrow, and you didn't sort of know where that would be. The idea that we can sort of like collectively, put our finger on the scale and do things. It's like a very quintessential sort of like progressivism versus conservatism, and like people tend to have these mindsets at the root. And like in Thomas Sowell's Conflict of Visions, I think is an interesting book because it tries to like dive into what is really at the core of right versus left. Like, is there a bunch of people who are just told to believe the same position and that's why they all have the same position? Or is there something at the root of one's mind that makes you like anti-guns and
So what is that?
Constrained and unconstrained?
What is that
yes,
root?
the unconstrained and the constrained vision. That's actually that's what I wanted to get at, right? There's these two visions of human nature, like constrained and unconstrained. And one basically the sort of constrained vision says that like there's just I'm going to butcher this out of simplicity, but like there's just sort of like a limit to what humans can be or do, right? There's this state of nature. There's some people will never be great, some people will be bad. Like, but then the unconstrained vision is sort of that like, no, we can make everybody great, and people are only bad because of these problems which we can solve, and we could sort of build like humanity, like the sky is the limit of what we can do to sort of modify the world and society that we live in to make it great. And the person who has like a more constrained vision is like, well, that doesn't work because you're assuming something about humane nature and humanity that just isn't true at the base layer. And in trying to build society like that, you're going to inadvertently build all these like regulatory bodies and these other things that'll end up having this like net negative impact, right? So that's kind of like the struggle between these political philosophies at like the root. Great book, by the way, if anybody wants to read it. It's a little
Which
dense.
one is that? It's
very
Thomas Sowell. What's that one
A
called?
Conflict of Visions.
Man, I've read probably 3 of his, but not that one.
It's not as like entertaining as like Black Rednecks and White Liberals.
That's the one I'm listening to now. Black rednecks and white liberals.
Yeah,
Great
Black
data.
Rednecks and White Liberals is a great book. It's really like 10 books in a book. Like it just goes from one thing to another. It goes from slavery to middlemen, minorities to like all. It's like all over the place, and it's like that book has like a lot of these kind of like crazy, mind blowing facts that like shift your perception. I think like, whoa, I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of bringing this up because when you see a new framework, you kind of it has one axis, right? But there's different axes to like have a framework for life and how you think. Have you guys found any other frameworks that you subscribe to that kind of like don't mesh with this well? Like, are there other frameworks that when you test it against this one, is it really that good? Is what I'm.
Wait, which framework were we talking?
We're talking about the latter framework, like
The
Tim
Tim Urban
Urban's
one?
framework of like how you think.
I was just trying to think of how it's practically applicable because, like, I think Alfalfa is sort of higher on this ladder.
At least
right?
strive to, right?
Strive to be. But then also, like, we're called Alfalfa, meaning, like, how do you, like, squeeze the edge out of life, right? And what I see in the ladder is that it's, like, theoretically pretty cool, But what I've seen in my life in terms of, like, just anecdotally, what I've seen is, like, I've seen people succeed without being high-rung thinkers, and like I just don't think it's, in a way, it's not that valuable on a micro level. Like it's like for each individual, like how you succeed is consistency, production, etc.
I kind of get what you're saying, and like what I've thought about this with like the red-gray union that Balaji proposed, and I'm going to say like it kind of reminds me of like the bell curve meme, and I'm not trying to say that people who are right are like 40 IQ on the left side and like all the tech people are on the right side. Like that's not exactly what I'm trying to say. But there is this idea that there is this sort of union between like the instinctual side of us and like the really gigabrain thinking, right? And in the middle here, where people are trying to intellectualize things in the wrong, that's where people really go off the beaten path. So I think that it is a fallacy of a lot of people on the left, especially, to think that we can always solve particular problems. So we can, if we just have enough information and we think hard enough, we can build some institution, we can build some regulatory body, and we can solve all of these problems. It's also, a thing that like tech has, right? But at least tech is going about this in a way that is a little better, like the free market, versus like, oh, we're going to solve this problem by creating this body of people, and are like, oh, well, these academics will solve it or something, right? But the reality of the world, like, is there is like, I think, a place for like instinct and intuition, and I don't know if that, like, does that lie in the, is that that it's probably not the primal brain, but it kind of is to a degree, right?
Like, I think we all are on the spectrum. Some part of our lives that are on each part of this ladder,
Of course.
right? And I mean, I think Tim Urban even says this is a self-help book for societies, not you.
Yeah.
It's for societies. Like, how could I leave, behind, like, for groups of people to organize in a better way? And I think one good thing is, like, I don't know, I was trying to take an inventory of, like, what parts am I tribal about? And, it's tough to find. There's some, like, really insignificant ones. You could be like, well, I really like this Formula One team, and that's very insignificant. But then there could be these others where you're kind of blind to the fact that you are tribal about it, and that you take this idea as part of your identity. And so it does make sense that some instinctual part is good, because I think that's how we all individually are. When, you're not 100% on the top of the rung of the ladder, or even the top half. And I think a good, like, action point is, like, try to take an inventory of, like, which part of your lives are at which point of the ladder.
What if you're, like, really sort of tribal, low rung about, like, your family, like, in a illogical way, but you're like, but that's family.
But it's logical.
But it's logical. Why?
This is a classic, like, bell curve.
Okay.
Meme. Like, it actually is quite logical to be tribal about your family, right? That is like it's
sort
a
of
literal
the,
extension
sort
of
the point.
you.
Yeah.
It is like why you exist in the world. It's like the root of, like, you're trying to spread your genes in it. Like, of course you would feel that way about you. It's not illogical at all. But it is illogical why you would, like, punch a guy in the face because he said something bad about your football team.
So you're saying that's a great example.
That is the base function that is good for us.
But that comes from the bottom rung and the top rung. Like, that kind of thinking to, your children are about to die and you have a chance to, like, literally hop in front of something that's going to kill them, take your own life to save your kids. That's a top rung of the ladder and a bottom rung of the ladder instinct. And are you saying that the decision point exists at both of those points?
I think it's a slightly different thing. What I'm saying is, like, we have these primitive, like, patterns, right, that are just embedded. There are these automatic programs that run, and the family one is a good example of, like, the base pattern that is function. Like, it wasn't a dysfunctional pattern; it was very functional, and still is functional to us today in the modern world.
It doesn't scale,
but that pattern gets hijacked when you talk about, like, sports teams, for example. Like, you're running that computer program, but now it's not serving you. Like, nobody's going to write anything on your tombstone because you tried to choke out the Eagles fan who said something mean about, like, Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, it's just that's just your instinct to defend your family just gone, like, completely awry because it's not your kid.
But hear me out. The Kelsey family, Pfizer, all wrapped into one. It's a conspiracy. I don't know. It might be worth choking out the Eagles fan. Anyway. Nice. All right. You think that's a good, like, tap into this little intro into the book? Because it sounds like we might bring it up.
Could be first of many.
I mean, that was just, like, the first chapter.
Talk shit about paddleball and see which brain takes over.
He called it paddleball.
He called it paddleball.
He called it paddleball.
Calcium. It is not called paddleball.
That is intentional,
It's
probably.
called pickleball.
His eyes are dilating. His hair is lighting up. All the reptilian.
Look, I generally acknowledge some of the ridiculousness about pickleball. Okay, I don't have any delusions about. I always say that padel is objectively like a much better sport.
Yeah,
I have no
well,
problem saying that.
You find kind of like low rung behavior in picklers versus tennis players, for instance. You know, that's like a battle.
But I feel like tennis players are more like low rung. Like
wow.
they're like
I could probably agree with
elitist and like asshole. Like the pickle people, they're just like vibing and having a beer, right? Like pickle is kind of like the bell curve, right? Because like if you intellectualize it too much, you're like, oh, well, this sport is objectively, it doesn't get your VO2. You're like the guy like, oh, it's not a sport. But actually, it has like all this stuff about it that's like great. That's like not the sport. It's the idea that like men and women can like compete on the same field together, and it actually is good and makes sense, which is something that doesn't really exist in any other sport. That's super cool. The social element to it's cool. Like you have to look past these little narrow things that you've intellectualized as like this is what makes a sport, and like outside of that, you start like frothing at the
I can't
mouth.
tell which rung of the ladder you're on right now. You could be very bottom or very top.
I'm currently occupying both ends of the bell curve simultaneously.
All right, boys. That was a fun episode. I like a little money. We somehow inserted some geopolitics in there and talked about a good little philosophy topic.
Yeah, we'll touch more on. I mean, like I said, that was just like chapter 1 of the book. So
wow.
there's a lot in there. There's a lot of good stuff. I think we can kind of keep bringing some.
This book is epic for anybody
lessons from
who hasn't dug in. I recommend it. 10 out of 10.
What's Our Problem
Highly
is the name of the
recommend.
book. It's digital too, so I think you buy.
Yeah,
it.
I think you can only get it either audiobook or like the iBook digital version, basically. Cool. So.
All right, boys. Well, that was fun. Thanks, everyone, hanging out for us live in the chat. We very much appreciate you. And if you have time next Wednesday, 5 p.m. PST, I feel funny saying this because I won't be here, but I really hope you do join. I will try to watch live if I can. You will be
Will
here.
Armand be here though?
We never know.
It's going to get real financial on you bitches.
We're just gonna have to do the first episode of Irresponsibly Long.
Yeah.
Irresponsibly Long, is that a new
Teaser.
Ooh, a teaser. I like it. All right, guys.
We decided that's the name of our podcast that we haven't done yet.
All right, guys. Thank you.